Hello, fellow Voyagers. Jess here with Odyssey Human, here today to talk about 5 rare habits that you can develop to become unbreakable. Welcome to the channel. This is the place where we help you hack through the jungles of consciousness so that you can discover the hidden treasures inside of you. My friends, everything you could ever want is in there inside of you because life kind of comes through us and not from the outside in. So if that sounds good to you, please subscribe. We'd love to have you on the channel. And today I wanted to talk about an article that I found that was called 5 Rare Habits of People with Incredible Emotional Strength. It was written by a psychologist, and I completely suspect that Google was listening to me because this article came up in my feed after my day yesterday. Now, yesterday I had an opportunity to speak on a self-care panel. And after the experience, I had a lot of personal realizations in the group that I was in. And when I got home, I just was kind of riding this high and realizing that I had arrived at a place that I'd always kind of dreamed of in my imagination, of being in a place where I felt like I was unstoppable, unbreakable, being able to realize my potential. And so I had a conversation with my mother about it. And I'm sure that in the process of that, Google's like, you might like this article. So I'm going to link the article below if you would like to read the original. But I read it, and there were some points that I think we can even transcend and that I want to share with you, and that really tie nicely into the journey that my channel has taken, right? As some of you may or may not know, Odyssey Human was not my original brand for this channel. It started as Emotional Fire Academy. I did a lot of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming teachings, where I gave people like really tangible tools every week, and I wore my little uniform. And then I had a moment where I needed to be more genuine. And so I transitioned to talking more about manifesting, because that was really where I was at, right? This channel kind of mirrors where I'm at. And so today I want to talk about being unbreakable. And at first I wrestled with the idea, and I mean lightly wrestling. I lightly wrestled with, can I really stand behind the word being unbreakable? Am I unbreakable? And I did some introspection about this. And I really think that these 5 qualities are the key, these 5 habits. And the beauty of it is, even if none of these come naturally to you, because they didn't for me, I'm going to be totally honest, only by being breakable, extremely fragile for a very long time, for the majority of my adult life, can I now contrast it and say, I think I'm unbreakable. I'm here, I've arrived. And I've worked really hard to get here. And I want to share these with you. I want to see what you think. As always, if you're watching and you have a thought or a comment or you want to engage with me, drop it below. I'm happy to engage with you. And I want to give you some kind of tools and insights. So I've made my own list. 5 rare habits to become unbreakable. If you want to develop these to become truly resilient, I don't even think that word encapsulates it, but unbreakable. Unbreakable by the fact that 90% of our experience is in imagination and only 10% is in physicality. And so that 10%, if we allow it to break us, if we allow it to permeate that 90, this is what I'm talking about, of maintaining a sense of inner authority, maintaining a sense of inner authority in that 90% of your imaginative, cognitive mind experience, that it will override whatever happens in that 10. And I want to give you some examples as we kind of go along. So in the article, their first example was, the first habit is metacognition. And I'll pin these below and put them in the description box. Metacognition is thinking about your thinking. This has been the entire process of my channel. My whole channel from the beginning till now comes from a place of metacognition, being aware of how we think, being aware of how we process our emotions, being aware of how we're framing things and where our attention is going. That is metacognition to me, becoming aware of your own processes. So I have over, I think, 211 videos as of today that you can go back and watch. And some of them are more technical than others, but they're all about metacognition, right? That's really what NLP, when I started this journey, I had just learned neuro-linguistic programming. And that's what NLP is about, right? It took a look at what were successful people doing? What were their thought processes? How were they framing their goals? How were they looking at life through their mental lens? And those folks, they studied those successful people and came up with NLP. It's really kind of an art. It's beautiful because once you learn it, you can really make it your own. Apply it to yourself and then grow in your understanding of it. Because once you expand your mind like that, once you become aware of your thoughts, it's almost like, how did I live without this before? I mean, imagine going through life and not knowing how to have control over your own body. How hard would that be? Same thing with your mind. Imagine going through life never being able to fully control your own mind. It still translates into a level of difficulty and stress and strain, and it feels really disempowering. So metacognition is the first habit, is staying, a part of you is always observing what you're thinking. A part of you is always aware of where you're at, what you're feeling. And in doing that, you maintain a degree of constant control, always. Number 2, attention shifting. I have talked about this a bunch of my older videos. When I was wearing my little uniform and talking about this, I talked about attention, right? Our 2 faculties were the story we told and attention. That's still true today. Those are our 2 faculties, the 2 things we can really master and leverage. Attention being one of those. And I had a tool, it used to be called drop it like it's hot. Drop it like it's hot. You literally think of the song. I'm sure the song, you can hear Snoop Dogg in your mind if you know the song. But we drop things when we have a really intense emotional reaction to something. Drop it. Drop it. Drop it like it's a hot rock. Because our initial reaction to things is always a habit. It's always a habitual response, but it doesn't have to be the reality of the situation. Just like when you drop a hot rock, right? It's burning your hands, you drop it, it's still gonna be there. You know that rock, in leaving it on the ground, it's still gonna be there. Just like your problem or your issue or the situation that you're having this emotional reaction to. When you drop it from your consciousness and shift your attention, you give it space. You literally transcend your own habitual response. So how you would normally respond to this situation, you let it go. You're almost like self-extracting from that pattern, right? And just letting it go for a little while. And when you return to it, you're always going to have more clarity. Always, I guarantee it, 100%. Right? Because you're more lucid. You're more lucid, you've had time to give it space, and then suddenly when you're in the shower, you're like, oh, I'm gonna handle it this way. Your heart has time to tell you how to proceed. Why does your heart matter? Because our heart is really, I think, our master guidance system. And so letting our heart, giving space for our heart to tell us, okay, this is what we should be doing next. And coming from a place of lucidity, sorry, my camera was misbehaving. Coming from a place of being lucid and clear-headed and not reactive, then we can make a different decision, right? But if we just let those automatic processes run, those automatic reactions run, then we'll often end up choosing the same old thing and the same old patterns play out, and we're wondering why do I keep having the same outcomes? Why? This is why. Attention shifting. Your attention is a valuable resource. Don't let people capture it. Don't let garbage capture it. junk values, right? Chasing things that don't mean anything, chasing money. And I mean, money is important, but I'm saying just chasing it for the fact of chasing it, because we think that's what we're supposed to do. But same with other things. So attention shifting, number 2 habit. Drop it like it's hot. Remember that when your attention is, when you're really fixated on something and you're seething and you're writhing and you're wrestling, drop it and let the solution come back to you. Give it that space for a more clear-headed level solution to come back to you. And that in itself is a metacognitive process. So number 3, in the article, they call it self-compassion. I think it's a little more comprehensive than that. And I want to call it self-support. And I have really in the last few videos been harping about what is the quality of your imagination, right? If 90% of your lived experience is imagination and 10% is your physical 3D reality, what is the quality, the actual tangible feeling, tone, or quality of your imaginative space? Is it nightmarish? Are you constantly catastrophizing? Is the critic in your head constantly bitching you out and chewing you up and spinning you out and being mean and scathing and, even swearing or screaming at you? I've heard people whose inner critic's involved, they scream at themselves. Self-support, it's a whole theme for your imagination of, is it a nice place to be? Do I enjoy being in my own imagination? And this involves some micro habits, things that I did intentionally, clearly. The first thing was I tamed my inner critic. And I teach this in my program. I have people go through and really tame that voice. That's the first thing I did for myself, because my voice was very, very critical of me. It was very mean. It was very catastrophic. Everything was catastrophic. Everything was the end of the world. And I would persuade myself with this voice into believing that that was true. Remember, the voice of the critic, the narrator, whoever is in your head talking to you in your thoughts, that persona, that entity is you. And at some point, you may want to reteach that voice how to speak to you. That's one thing I did. And then another one is, what are you anticipating? What are you visualizing in your imagination? Self-support, I think, also involves, a second micro habit, not anticipating chaos, not anticipating destruction. And, I often had very intrusive thoughts of like the worst case scenario happening. And sometimes it did happen because it would just pop into my head. My imagination loved to scare me. And I just thought that was how it was. That was just how my mind worked. That's not true. It's your imagination. You're in control there. You can be like, no. And so the tool that I have for that is swiping left. When you have a visual, catastrophic thing pop into your head or a really nasty thought, I use the swipe left method. It's like Tinder, right? Imagine your imagination as Tinder, where you're just getting images of people. And the ones you really don't like, you're like, ugh. You get that little like, ooh, you swipe left on. You swipe left and then you don't give it another thought, right? You don't go back and wrestle with that person's profile and what they say. Like, you don't do that. You just swipe left. Again, this is kind of like drop it like it's hot. It's just like letting it go. You're practicing letting things go in your imagination. These habits, doing more of them, create a more self-supportive environment for you. Also, if you want to consistently practice this, if you need just a go-to tool to do this constantly, consistently, check out my tool in the description box. It's always there. It's always available for you. It's always relevant to everything I talk about, because that tool is the one I used to start cleaning up my imagination, to start supporting myself, using my imagination to support myself, emotionally support myself so that I was less and less dependent on other people. I used to lean really hard on everybody. You know, as soon as I was upset, I would call someone and tell them what was happening and seek that soothing from them. Whereas I began to self-soothe. I began to self-support using that tool. So check that out if you really need a go-to. It has a very clear explanation with it. But really, self-support comes down to what is your hygiene in your imagination? What kind of practices are you doing? Don't take anything in there for granted. It's all changeable, it's all habitual, and so you just choose differently and you act differently within your own mind. It's that simple. You set some new standards in there. Clean the place up and make it hospitable instead of a horrible place to exist. You know? I'm not saying that's what's happening with you, but that for me, that was definitely what was happening for me for many years, and why I was so fragile. So fragile. Because when that 90% is a desert where I constantly abandoned myself, it's no wonder when the 10%, when things went wrong, I just crumbled because I didn't have my 90% supporting me and bolstering me and keeping me healthy mentally and cognitively. Number 4, in the article, they call it emotional tolerance. I want to even expand this even bigger to perceptual stamina. What does this mean? Perceptual stamina is the ability to realize that states of being are places in your imagination. States of being are places. They have a physical residence, like a perceptual residence in your imagination, and so you know that they exist, right? I'm not afraid. Let's give a physical example. I'm not afraid that Philadelphia is going to disappear, or Bali, or anywhere I consider a physical place that I can go to that is there. There's a permanency to it that will not go away. I don't fear it disappearing or losing it or not being able to go there. The same thing with your states of being, right? You can go to a state of anger, of even identities, of being a winner or a loser, or feeling like this is the worst day of your life, or that you're a superstar. These identities and emotions and states, these characters are spatial. I consider them spatial because there's a permanency in taking up space, right? And so I can go there. And then when I'm not there, I don't fear that I will lose it, right? Because it's there. I can go there. And if I find my way out, I just go back. And so perceptual stamina, this builds up your tolerance of when you do lose your mind and you're freaking out, you know that it's not going to last forever. You know that it's just a place. And if you want to extract yourself from that, you just go to a different place in your imagination, right? You go to a different state. And so you develop the stamina for jumping into different areas of your perception. And that builds up a tolerance where you don't feel afraid of fear anymore or angered by anger. You don't fully embody these states and then think you're never going to extract from them, because when we embody the state and we forget that they're a state and not who we are, that's when they become overwhelming, right? That's when they become overwhelming. And the last one in the article, it calls it assertive communication. I don't quite agree with that. I think the final habit, and this one is the one that I spoke about yesterday on the panel for self-care. The final habit that really makes you unbreakable, I think, is sincerity. What do I mean by this? And there was a great quote in the article. As soon as you trust yourself, you will know how to live. And that apparently was said by Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. As soon as you trust yourself, you know how to live. There is a degree of sincerity that you can start to adopt where you let your heart make all the decisions, right? When you feel a desire, you instantly fulfill it for yourself in imagination, and you fulfill it so completely in imagination that you don't need the 3D to comply. And sometimes you do make the decision, and I do this, sometimes you do make the decision to take that sincerity all the way to 100%, right? You've accomplished it in your 90% of imagination. You've fulfilled yourself. You have imagined that you have it, but then you also go out in the real world and you are sincere with people, right? You tell them what you feel. And you do it, you can do it tactfully and authentically, but you take that risk of being like, I really love you, or I really want this job. I know it's my job. And speaking in this very powerful, sincere, authentic way. I did that yesterday on the panel and people respond to that. They feel the authenticity of that, of like, this person is literally speaking from their heart, and other people's hearts respond. So, and it does involve some risk. You're putting your neck out there. You're being honest. You're living authentically. But if it doesn't quite get there immediately in the 3D, you still have that self-supportive environment of your imagination where you're fulfilling it for yourself. So you're not so dependent on needing to see the evidence out there, right? And so sincerity to me is that final piece of being really unbreakable, of like seriously living by your values, letting them permeate 100% of your lived experience, you know? Like really doing that in a big way. And that involves like chasing your dreams, like starting the business you always wanted to do, or whatever your heart is craving, being sincere enough to give that to yourself as much as possible, as often as possible, without fear, without shame or guilt. So this was a longer video today, but I really hope these 5 habits, I would love for you to develop them. Tell me what you think, see which ones you're already doing, and go back. I have so many tools for you. You know, I gave you 3 of them today. I have the tool in the description box to help you create a self-supportive, imaginative environment. I have the drop it like it's hot to help you shift your attention, right? When you feel the emotion, the strong habit of an emotional response, drop whatever it is. Learn how to drop it. That will build up your ability to attention shift. And then that 3rd tool was, swipe left. Swipe left, a great cleaning tool for your mind of when junk gets in there, swipe left, or think of it like a broom, sweep it out of there. Like it's out. And you don't have to entertain the garbage that pops up in your mind. And as you do this more and more, what I found is you swipe less more and more. You swipe left less and less because it's become habitual. It's a cognitive habit. You're just like, nope, out of my mind. And you're gonna have less of those intrusive thoughts. You're gonna have less of that critic bearing down on you. And you really do become unbreakable. I honestly feel being able to say that 10 years ago, I was so fragile and so breakable and so broken and so unable to see my dreams through and stick with anything. And now saying, I am unbreakable. I have done all these things. I practice them. And this is a lifestyle that we continue to practice and habits that we continue to feed and do. This is what being unbreakable looks like. So let me know what you thought. I'd love to hear your comments. Thank you for watching if you're still with me, and have a fantastic day. Bye.